Does the new college football playoff, expanded playoffs, is that a death sentence for the Pac-12 conference? Let's explore that possibility. Here at College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar, we've been talking for weeks, for months, about the consolidation of college sports, the economics of it, the content, the networks wanting it to happen. Now, are we seeing the possibility of the Pac-12 conference being eliminated at the hands of the Big Ten and the Big 12 because of this college football playoffs and all the money that's going into it? Let's look at two articles that were written yesterday, and let's delve into this possibility. We explore everything here at College Football's Peek Around the Corner, as you know. Let's get into it. First article yesterday was from Front Office Sports, written by Michael McCarthy and Amanda Kristovich. Expanded college football playoffs could fetch $2.2 billion in annual media rights fees. A huge number. Here's the article. I will read some of it and then we'll discuss what it means. The much maligned college football playoffs is poised to possibly score the highest annual media rights of any college sports property. With the college football playoffs expanding from 4 to 12 teams by 2026, the college football playoffs could sign media rights deals with multiple TV partners yielding over $2 billion annually, sources told Front Office Sports. The college football playoffs' current exclusive deal with ESPN reportedly pays an average of $470 million a year through 2026. The expanded playoff, however, of 12 schools could fetch as much as $2.2 billion per year, more than double the current payout. Bob Thompson, the former president of Fox Sports Networks, thinks the combined annual rights of $2 billion would be a little light given the addition of so many new postseason game telecasts. I think it will be north of $2 billion. So $2.2 billion is possible, Thompson told Front Office Sports on Tuesday. Okay. Here, we skip down here. A major bump in the rights fee may not be the only way the future contract looks different, however. Like the Big Ten Conference and the NHL before it, the college football playoffs is expected to pursue an NFL-like strategy of splitting rights among multiple TV partners. The goal? Maximize payout. Okay, we'll skip a few of these, but basically, college football playoffs is going to be given to multiple media companies. Hopefully, that's the strategy. A bidding contest, because there's going to be 11 games now, 11 playoff games instead of 3. There's going to be 11. And this is what Kevin Warren and the Big Ten and actually Kliakoff and the Pac-12, this is what they wanted. They wanted multiple bidders for the playoff content. That's why they hit the pause button until they make sure that this would happen. That's why they hit the pause button on potential expansion of the playoffs 12 to 18 months ago. We'll go back to the article. Look for Fox to challenge ESPN for the college football playoffs rights in one of the biggest bidding wars in college sports history, predicted Thompson. Okay, so that's what we basically just said. Either way, ESPN may end up shelling out more to maintain its current contract, Hancock told reporters. There's a possibility the playoff could expand in 2024-25 before the next contract. That could provide an additional windfall of $450 million, as Sports Illustrated previously reported. Sure, there's going to be more revenue, college football executive director Bill Hancock told reporters on Friday. We all know that. Okay. Then he did not, however, speculate how much revenue would increase. Okay, so that's the first article I wanted to get to. I think the next one is even more interesting. Just give me a second. From CBS Sports, from Dennis Dodd. Now, so that the Front Office Sports talks about $2.2 billion per year being the possible amount of money that comes in for the expanded college football playoffs. Dennis Dodd in this article put out a number of $1.2 billion, which I think is way too low. And I think I shouldn't put words in his mouth, but obviously you're going to go more than, right now it's currently $470 million for 3 games. Of course, it's going to go more than double, way more than double when you're adding all the additional games for a 12-team playoff, right? It go to 11 games in the playoffs. So $2.2 billion, that's the number that we're going to work with. The rest of this article, though, I find very interesting, fascinating. This was yesterday, Dennis Dodd. We're going to read the article, and then we're going to combine the 2 articles, and you can see that there's just incentive to eliminate a Power 5 conference when you go look at the numbers, okay? Let's get into this article. Dennis Dodd. The college football playoff CEOs took control as they should, as they hadn't to this point. In this case, the presidents and the chancellors who run the game were upset with their own conference commissioners who let the expansion process dissolve into a petty territorial infighting. I'm not so sure I agree with that. I think the commissioner did what the presidents wanted them to do. But that's a discussion for another episode. There was plenty of money available in CFP, just not enough opportunity. Lots of folks talked about the nation's second most popular sport shrinking into regional play. The SEC has won 12 of the last 16 national championships. It sucked in the Big 12's 2 best teams, Texas and Oklahoma, in what became a movement about movement. Big 10 followed, snagging USC and UCLA from the Pac-12. Consolidation. Never in the history of the game have the game's best brands and programs been concentrated in such small spaces. 2 conferences at the top of the game. The SEC and the Big Ten were not only monopolizing the money, viewers, and talent, they were monopolizing the game. Now, we talked about that at Flood Empire. We've been talking about that here on Peek Around the Corner since we opened the channel on August 10th. But we've been talking about that on Flood Empire for months before the national media caught on to what was going on. And now you're seeing the consolidation. And I think this college football playoffs could spurn even more of that. Let's go on with this article. We're going to skip a lot of this because I want to get to the main part, the revenue distribution. Okay? There's again Dennis's Dodd article on CBS Sports yesterday. Revenue distribution. Now he's throwing out numbers here. We're just going to say these numbers are accurate. He's not saying these numbers are total. He's just trying to give everybody an idea what it's going to look like. Because when the Big Ten and the SEC, the PAC, the Big 12, and the ACC, when they sit down and they try to negotiate the revenue distribution of this playoff system, they're also going to be doing this with the G5 conferences. And the previous contract, or the contract, college football playoff contract that we now exist in, basically, I'm going to just approximate the numbers here. Basically, all the Power 5 conferences share in about 75% of the total $470 million, which I think is like $350 million. Give or take a couple million, okay? But that's not how it's going to be going forward. I don't believe it. No one I've talked to believes it. Dennis Dodd doesn't believe it. Big Ten and SEC are basically, and he says it in this article, are basically going to be given money, and in return, they're going to be given access to the playoffs, continued playoffs, expanded access to the playoffs by the G5 conferences, and making sure that the Big 12, Pac-12, and ACC has access to the playoffs. So in other words, Big Ten and SEC are going to be getting more money of the total pot. The pot's going to grow bigger, and Big Ten and SEC slices are going to be growing bigger because, frankly, they have the bargaining chips to do so. So they're going to press the advantage. And we've been talking about this for months, And other people are finally catching on to what's been going on. So let's get it back to the article, revenue distribution. This is the next biggest task for conference commissioners and university presidents to tackle. Several sources told CBS Sports. Yeah, this is the big one, the revenue distribution. The playoff axis, 12 teams, 6 top-ranked conference champions, get automatic bids. Then the 6 top-ranked in the last committee poll will get at that large bids. 4 top 5 conference champions ranked will get a bye. You guys know the rest. That's been established. The revenue distribution is the tough nut to crack. It must be determined, we're back to the article, it must be determined what fair compensation looks like for the conferences, a task last undertaken when conference football playoffs started in 2014. Basically, whatever kind of weight the SEC and the Big Ten throw around the room will be a huge factor. In expansion, those conferences are trading money for access, like we just stated. They'll get their money, but the remaining 8 conferences get a better shot at the playoffs. That will be a first. That is true. Back to the article. That axis, tripling the field, right, from 4 to 12 schools, that axis, tripling the field, keeps the feds away from collusion and antitrust accusation from the smaller conferences. Those lesser leagues now have more access than ever, true. Then in itself smothers any talk of monopoly, which we consider true. The playoffs is the key, Oresco says. He's the commissioner of the AAC. If you have access to that, I think you stay relevant. Your donors will care. Your fans will care. The schools will remain the investment because they have a chance to compete. That's going to be the key to everything. In 2021, the Power 5 conferences each got $74 million annually from college football playoffs, for being Power 5 conferences. The group of 5 split $95 million, about 20% of the total annual net distribution, back when the college football playoffs were formed. That percentage was basically agreed upon as the number that would keep the group of 5 from suing. With access going from 4 to 12, that reinforces the unlikely prospect of any illegal action. I completely agree. The group of 5, the 5 G5 conferences, they split in total $95 million. In this, if the deal, and I'm not gonna bury you with numbers, but I've had the calculator out figuring all this out. And if the new deal, if G5 continues to get 20% of the annual net distribution of the college football playoffs, and you have it at $2.2 billion is the total amount. The group of 5, each group of 5 Conference USA, Mountain West, the MAC, the Sun Belt, I forget the other one, there's 5 of them. They would each get $88 million a piece in this new deal. They wouldn't just be slicing up $95 million in total. They would be each receiving about $88 million. Of course, I'm going to be off a few million. But that is the staggering difference between this old deal that we're in now and the new deal, that if it comes out to be about $2.2 billion. Okay, great news for the G5 conferences. I don't think this might be good news for the Pac-12, and that's what we're getting at, right? Here we go. Going forward, here's one educated guess on the future distribution, assuming a doubling of the annual revenue brought in from the college football playoffs from $600 million to $1.2 million per year. Okay, so the numbers are going to be wrong. Dennis Dodd is working from a $1.2 billion a year. It's going to be probably over $2 billion a year. Okay, so when you're looking at this, just basically double the number. Let's say it's $2.4 billion. So when I read you these numbers, just double it, okay? SEC and Big Ten combined to get half the total. This is Dennis Dodd's educated guess, CBS Sports. $600 million, $300 million each. That's additional $6.7 million per year for each of those league schools. But in the $2.2 to $2.4 billion contract, each of those conferences would get $600 million each. Okay? Dennis Dodd has the SEC and the Big Ten receiving 50% of the total distribution revenue. Then he goes on to say ACC, Big 12, and Pac-12 would split 30% of the pot, about $120 million each. So let's just bump that up to about $240 million each, okay? Or $200 million each, depending on if you want to go with the $2.2 billion or $2.4 billion number. And I calculated that to be about $18 million per school in the Big 12, for example. About $20 million per school in the Pac-12, because I had it at $200 million with 10 schools. That's $20 million apiece. Again, don't want to weigh you down with the money, the numbers. Group of 5 conferences split the remaining 20%. That's $240 million each. It says here $48 million each, but you can double that. I had it about at $88 million each for each conference, which is a spectacular number for the group of 5 schools, for the conferences and their schools. Okay, so basically what Dennis Dodd and his educated guess on the distribution, let's just get off this article here. Again, I don't want to weigh anyone down with the numbers, but again, please, in the comment screen, if you like this, write in the comment screen, write down what you think the numbers will be if you want to get deep in the woods. And please, if you like this content, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and please share the video. I guess what I'm trying to say is the Big Ten and the SEC, according to this distribution guess by Dennis Dodd, are going to be looking to take 50% of all the revenue. Split between those two. Combined, it's 50%. Of the 3 other Power 5 conferences, they're going to be taking 30% of the total. And then the G5 conferences are going to be splitting the 20%. So, look at the incentive. Look at the incentive for the Big 12 and the Big 10 to eliminate the Pac-12, to just eliminate them. If the Big 10, we've been talking about how the Big 10 is not going to poach any more of the Pac-12 schools, right? If their numbers go down for each of the current schools, the payouts for each of the current schools. Iowa, the athletic director said it. None of the current 14 schools plus UCLA and USC, none of those current Big Ten schools are going to want to take less than the projected rate now to add on 2 more schools like a Washington and Oregon, right? But you can see how the expanded playoff revenues, if Pac-12 is eliminated, how that would fill the coffers of the Big Ten schools, and there's an incentive to add 2 Pac-12 schools, and there's an incentive for Big 12 to add the 4-corner Pac-12 schools. Because instead of the Big 12 and the ACC sharing that 30% of the pot with the Pac-12, they could just share among them 2 conferences 25% of the total pot and come out ahead, or 26% or 27%. You can adjust the numbers. And going back to the Big Ten, taking Oregon and Washington, you know, if Oregon and Washington comes into the conference, they're all likelihood, high probability that they're going to be taking less payout than the other Big Ten schools, right? It's going to be a buy-in period of 6 years, much like all the other Big Ten schools have had to go through at one time in their history. Even the original Big Ten members, when the Big Ten Network was created, they couldn't accept that Big Ten Network money for years because that had to go back into the pot to pay Fox Sports for building the Big Ten Network from the beginning. So Oregon and Washington, they take less for the media, for the Tier 1, Tier 2 media contracts to come in. They won't be getting paid $75 million. Let's just say, for example, let's say they'll be getting $55 million a year each. Still way ahead of what they would get from the Pac-12 media contract, correct? We all agree with that. And let's say they take a little bit less of the college football playoff revenue. A little less than the other Big Ten schools, but yet still far ahead for what they would receive from staying in the PAC. And all that extra money would be distributed to the current Big Ten schools so their pies do not get decreased. There's an incentive for the Big 12 for how this is laid out, for how Dennis Dodd's educated guess on future distribution of the expanded college football playoffs, if it's played out this way, you can see the incentive of the Big 12 and the Big 10 to eliminate the Pac-12. And then in total, we would go from 10 conferences to 9 conferences. Or we remain at 10 conferences, but the remaining Pac-12 schools, that would not be a Power 5 conference. They would not have any bargaining chips. They would not get the same cut as the Big 12 and the Pac-12. They would be deemed as a G5 conference. So again, the incentive is there. It's just one more log to put on the fire. We're dumping more gasoline, we're lighting more matches, and we're throwing it in the fire. It's just more incentive for more consolidation. Again, I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just giving you a peek around the corner. When I read these 2 articles, you could just see the incentive. Some people did comment on it. I have to give people credit. People were commenting, look at this. Why wouldn't the Big 12 want to take those 4 corner schools? They can grab more of the college football playoff, expanded playoff money, and that will pay for the additions or help pay for the additions. Same with the Big 10. So, is this the college football playoffs, the new format and the new distribution that we don't really know what it's going to be yet, but it's going to be something like what Dennis Dodd said? Is that the death sentence for the Pac-12? Did the Pac-12's death sentence just get written? Let me know your comments. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me. I read all your comments. Again, thank you for being here. Again, from all of us at Peek Around the Corner to all of you, until next time, you all please take care of each other. Thank you so very much.